Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Feeling Seen, the podcast that talks about the movies that make us feel seen. And my co-host today is a very exciting actor coming out in a very exciting new project who you might know from previous very exciting projects such as Patty Cakes, or perhaps one of the great underrated disaster movies of the 21st century, Underwater. He was the lead voice in the film. I'm getting perhaps a chuckle from his end. He was a lead voice in the animated film Elemental. He starred in Archive 81, Jurassic World Dominion, a broad swath of material, and coming up in Kinds of Kindness, Mamoudou Athie. Welcome to the show. What else do the people need to know about you before we get started? But Emmy nominee, can't leave it out.
I mean, I think you've done such a wonderful job introducing me. I couldn't add to it. Thank you.
Thank you. You're so welcome. What I first saw you in was Black Box, the Amazon Blumhouse, like Welcome to the Blumhouse horror package of movies that they put out. And and again, huge Underwater fan, especially with the alternate ending, which I consider to be the official ending. Listen, that movie is about a bunch of nice people just doing their best for each other in a harrowing circumstance, and I think that needs to come up more about it, in addition to being scary and very intense. But, there's such, a great range within your filmography, and I feel like the ultimate sort of being sort of knighted as an individual pursuing range and stimulation and a broad palette of character is being in a Yorgos Lanthimos movie. So with just the sort of incredible singular vision that man has, tell me about going into a Yorgos world and how that for you has been a progression of your arc as a performer.
Yeah, well, I've wanted to work with Yorgos since I saw his first English language film that was out in theaters, was The Lobster. It came out in 2015, and I saw some friends of mine from drama school, and everyone was on the same page of okay, this is one of the people that we need to find a way somehow to work with, because it's just he's such a singular. I mean, you could say that of anyone, but there's a specificity that I find just so almost moving. You know, he doesn't. It's not taking chances for taking chances' sake. He's interested in something, and he fully explores it in a way that is uncompromising. If we're gonna talk about it, we're gonna talk about it. If we're gonna do it, we're gonna do it. And that's what you want to do, especially if you're making something that is going to cost you in some kind of way, either emotionally or physically or whatever. You always want to do something to the fullest. I feel like that's how we were taught. And I had a teacher that always put it no skim milk choices, only whole milk choices. It's just you want to really just commit to it and do it. It's the most satisfying feeling. So that's why I think when you watch his movies, they're not necessarily something that you can intellectually decipher all the time, and maybe you can, but that's not the point. You just want to feel it. You know, you want to feel it, and that feeling comes from real specificity, real investigation, and real commitment.
Well, and I feel too, is from the position of a viewer, it feels like movies by Yorgos Lanthimos, movies by Luca Guadagnino, just sort of two off the top of my head, who works who I've seen stuff from recently and who I love consistently. I see them get to come out with the movies that they make, and it feels like a sort of antidote. I'm a big blockbuster franchise fan. Give me Fast 12. I'm all in. One of the defining performances of Jason Momoa's whole career, when we look back in 80 years, will be the villain in that last Fast movie. But that said, it is also a time where independent and original cinema feels like it has such an additional, so many barriers to get over in order to get made. And then I watch movies by those two filmmakers, for example, and it's okay, but we can still dream. And there's still hope because these guys, and I wanted to know from an actor's perspective, what sort of feelings those creators like that engender when it's all right, we have some buoys, even if I'm kind of feeling dark times around me at moments.
Yeah, you're not lying about that. There's a comfort. There's a comfort there. What I grew up watching, the palette was large. It was like Con Air and The Gladiator or Lion King, but I was also introduced to Life is Beautiful, which was which I believe was a hit.
Yeah, that was
you
a
know?
hit. That was one of those from overseas that really actually caught. And when Roberto Benigni won that Oscar, I think America knew to root for him at that point solidly.
Yes, and he gets up on the table and it's like everyone. I remember that as a kid. You know what I mean? And it meant something to me, and I loved that movie. So that's what we were raised on. You know, that's what we were raised on. Just everything has a place in the business. It's not just this profit-seeking machine. So when I work with people like Yorgos, or I recently had a little thing that I did with David Lowery that I'm really excited about. People that really, he's this guy, that I really just have a profound respect for because of what feels like an uncompromising vision. And of course, I don't think they're just some tyrants that are difficult to work with. But when I say uncompromising, they know exactly what they want to do, and they find the people that are going to help them achieve that vision, and also maybe see something that they didn't see or whatever. They hire people that can only help with the goal of the movie, but they're certainly the true leader of that movie and make it happen. So it's comforting. It's comforting, and it's what I was trained to do, is what I've wanted to do all of my life, and it's the whole point of it. Because when it turns into this soup of like, I don't know what, it just becomes like, which honestly I haven't really experienced much. Very, very, very rarely have I ever experienced that, and I've been I do consider myself one of the most fortunate people in this business for that reason, that I've gotten to work with people that have been singularly minded in the pursuit of what they're doing for the most part, and been supported, because you can be as single-minded as you want in the pursuit of something, but if you're not getting the support, the movie's not happening. So yeah, I feel very comforted and excited about it, and I do feel like there's hope as long as people understand that this is how good movies are made.
Yeah,
this is that's it. You just have to trust the people you hire.
I feel like the character choice that you have brought for us today, I feel like just really sings with sort of that, like, the theme of like arcs, like a career arc, and developing through the work that you do and deciding what it is you do and do not want to be able to curate for yourself, because you have brought Dev Patel's directorial debut, Monkey Man, and your character is he is really the titular character anyways, but he is the kid. He is credited as Kid, and I wanted to hear from you about the initial experience of watching Monkey Man for something that seems to have impacted you or imprinted itself upon you so much.
I couldn't respect that guy more, Dev Patel. I don't think it's possible for me to have any more respect for that guy. Just the story of him making that movie, what he went through to make it. And Dev Patel's a big star.
He's a big star.
Like Dev Patel, he has one of those careers where you've seen him since he was a kid. And he's been consistently putting out great work. I remember watching Lion, and I was like, is this, and I don't believe in this phrase as a concept, but this is maybe one of those movies. I can only think about this with like Malcolm X or, Malcolm X is, Malcolm X is like,
it's one of the greats of all time.
Yeah, that was, sometimes, anyway, it's hard to put that into language, that one. But when I remember watching Lion, and I was like, this might be a perfect performance. You know what I mean? Like, this.
You need to face reality.
What do you mean, reality? Do you have any idea what it's like knowing my real brother and mother spend every day of their lives looking for me? Huh? How every day my real brother screams my name. Can you imagine the pain they must be in not knowing where I am? Huh? 25 years, Luce. 25!
And there's no such thing. A performance isn't meant to be perfect. It's a living, breathing, hopefully, you're watching somebody just reacting. But I just saw somebody just so full of life and so fully committed to everything that they were doing, and everything felt very specific. Like everything meant something. It wasn't just general. But it was also so full. I was so moved by it, and I saw him differently after that. It's not that I didn't, have regard from prior to that, but I was like, this guy's the realest of the deals. And then Green Knight and everything. So anytime he comes out with something, I make it a point to see it, or it's on my radar. And so when Monkey Man came out, I couldn't wait to see it. And I saw it and I couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe it. This guy made a movie, this real kind of eat the rich, social commentary movie that was also incredibly thrilling action flick.
Yeah, that action choreography gets blistering at points.
Yeah.
I mean, him dragging a knife through the neck of a man with just his teeth while his hands are being bound elsewhere. It was crazy. The blood spatter on his face. Crazy. Yeah, it's insane.
And while that all, like, you hear that and you're like, what? That's Mamoudou, really? But
really?
That's not what the movie was about. That just happens he's doing whatever he can to get what he needs to get, which is revenge, sure, yeah, and it's like satisfying revenge.
Yeah,
a good movie, you're like, yeah, you need to get that back. You need to get that back.
Yeah,
you really need it, and it's so satisfying when he does. But it's also liberating people. It's just so many things happen in that movie, and it's just how his start, where he's throwing fights in the beginning of the movie, to the end where he's liberated a nation. It's like from true evil. It's just man. And he did it, and he made that movie happen. Like by force of will. He made just hearing the stories about it. It's like, come on, man. It's incredible.
Do you feel in your, with what you've accrued so far, is it like, I know that one day I need my own, by hook or by crook, I want to get to a point where I'm making that movie that I can just hog tie into existence and sort of there's no choice but to it. Is that sort of is that within your sort of scope, that passion project that just will no longer be denied to you?
Yeah, that's happening now. Yeah, no, I there's something that I was sent while I was filming Jurassic Dominion. And I'm gonna it's so annoying to be coy.
No, but you have to, you literally have to, you have to.
But
yeah.
But I have
it's so
to.
weird how, you guys, it's not just, people being cute when they're like, well, I can't talk about it yet. You actually can't. And
No,
it's I can't talk about it. And also, by the time I can tell you about it, we're already going to be most of the way through shooting, because that's the only way that I'll know that it's really real. It's really happening.
Couldn't have said it better. Yes.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. But it's based on a Mauritanian man. It's a true story about, and I can put it simply in the simplest terms possible. It's about a man in search of who his father was.
Okay.
And he goes on this journey and finds out throughout the country who he was, and he meets different people throughout the way, and then eventually he comes across this tape. And it's this really incredibly moving story about people, humanity, my people from Mauritania. And I can't tell you a little bit about it. I can at least tell you our director will be a first-time director who is just one of the most brilliant directors I've ever gotten a chance to work with. She primarily works in theater. There's a reason for that. First, I trust her. I've known her since we were in grad school together. Her name's Liliana Blaine Cruz. Recently nominated for a Tony for Skin of Our Teeth.
Oh, wow.
Now she's doing the Prince musical. And we've been friends since, for over 10 years now. And she's worked in the TV space some, but this was, I knew her eye, her visuals, and just the scope of splendor and just the fantastical nature of just her visions and projects in general is something that I was like, this movie, along with its simple and basic human story, combined with the spectacle of what the desert can be like, the mirages of the desert, the vast expanse. I just think she could do something really special. Aside from that, I'm not sure how much I can say.
Hey, I feel like that's a generous offering, what you provided.
Oh, great.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
But I think we're partnering with some people that we couldn't be happier to partner with to make this story happen. And it's been a couple of years since everything's been going down. It's until Sesame that was like 4 years ago, I think.
God, wow,
Yeah, it was about 4 years ago. So we're finally, getting to the point where things are starting to move and happen. So it's really exciting. It's just been really exciting.
Well, and obviously with Monkey Man, you have something that is like, it's rooted in like, there are such parallels to so many societies at the moment of like that sort of zealot figure that is poisoning like a nationalistic populist insurgency. Like that, I watched that and I was like, this feels reminiscent of here.
Familiar.
They have destroyed our sacred values. They have stolen our homes, poisoned our children's minds. They have polluted us with their symbols, their false idols. We have been blinded. Will you stand with us? Will you plead with us? Will you?
Speak through the lens of like Indian politics, like the Hindutva nationalism, and you see people waving signs of like stop killing Muslims. Like there's the Hindu-Muslim like binary in conflict. Like so like it's clearly very specific to India, but it is so resonant with like a global shift toward a sort of like V for Vendetta future authoritarianism where it's, don't believe your eyes and ears, believe what I tell you kind of thing. And, spearheaded by a religious zealot.
As the Sovereign Party climbs in the polls, allegations have surfaced that you destroyed 200 acres of forest land to build your mega factory.
It's not a factory. It's a commune.
And what about the farmers that have been displaced?
The land was barren, empty. Few families who lived there have joined the cause.
And your workers who complain of horrible working conditions.
They aren't workers. They are my disciples.
What struck me about, just like as a theme that runs through this movie, and again, the scope of the problems in this movie are huge, but from an industry sort of worker in Hollywood perspective, worker in film and creativity, what really struck me about Bobby, about the kid, Dev's character, is before he hones himself into the sharpest of blades to exact righteous vengeance on his enemies, basically his biggest skill is he has taught himself how to get the shit kicked out of him and keep going.
Yeah.
I don't want charity. What I need is a job.
This is King's. We just don't hire off the street. Where's your references? Your CV? Look, I don't have time for all this. You pass it over.
There's my CV. That's bleach. Chemical, oil. Give me the job no one wants to do. I'll do it. No complaint. This is all I know.
His most lucrative job is he's a fall guy in a local bare-knuckle fighting organization where it's his role to go down. So Charlton Copley, the crazy ringmaster running it, can rake in profits and pay out people and stuff.
At his own discretion.
Absolutely.
Just like, I'll pay you this much.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And just a perfect role for the cartoon character that is Charlton Copley so effortlessly.
Don't spend it all at once, eh?
Tiger, this is half.
Boss, that's what you got last time. What are you saving for a better place to live? You want another 50%, you bleed. That's why it's called the bleed bonus.
I need that money.
In dance. Don't look at me like that. You chose the name. You're like those little monkeys, in the marketplace, a little with a little pink skirt. That's you. Put on a show, get the money. There's hundreds of oaks out there that'll do this, eh? Hundreds. Planning to take your place if this isn't for you.
But I wanted to hear from you sort of like if there is, because I feel like I hear this from a lot of people I know in the industry, and I wonder what your experience was of like, you're working on this project, got brought to you 4 years ago. There's time ahead of you, so much time ahead of you still to bring something like this to life. Even if you started shooting tomorrow, like there's just so many intricacies that go into making something. Tell me about just like the art of getting back up again. Like the art of being the person who like, you cannot beat me out of this place. Like I will stay.
I think that is the primary ingredient to any kind of success. A kind of delusional, not quite rabid, but just a relative, a kind of persistence that no matter what, by hook or by crook, which is a really weird phrase, but like no matter what, you will commit yourself to something, and yes, it'll cost you. Yes, there'll be some points where it's just incredibly discouraging, but I also think that's where it's not to rely on oneself entirely. It's much harder, and it's a lot easier to have a great support system around you, for those moments where it's incredibly difficult and it seems impossible. That's how I've gotten through a lot of my most difficult moments in life. I mean, I have the best friends in the world. My family's incredibly supportive. The people I work with, my team have been also likewise incredibly supportive. And I'm extremely grateful to them for all the things that they have done for me. And that's because everyone, whether they believe in a particular thing or not, they ultimately believe in me, or at least my pursuit of it, and likewise me with them. I think a healthy ecosystem around you can help support you in those weaker moments, or those moments where things are just so trying that it just seems impossible, because you get perspective outside of yourself, or outside of one's despair, like something not working out. But I've been also blessed, I have to say, with a kind of delusional self-belief. That's been very, very, that's like, I look back at certain decisions that I've made that have worked out, and I'm like, that was not maybe the best idea, but it did work out. And that's why I think I'm like, well, I think that's a key ingredient. You just have to really believe it.
Well, and that's it's such a like the amount of times the word delusion comes up on this podcast is so delightful, because it's true. You're especially since it's a job based in I'm going to make something up. I have words, but let me promise you, I'm going to make a whole world attached to this language on a paper, and it's going to work out, and it's going to be great, and it's going to move people, and it's going to be a success for us. There's no pragmatism anywhere that enters into that conversation, so it has to be based on delusion, leaps of faith, and just hope. It has to.
Well, I also think the thing that you do, and this is where it becomes key, because I truly believe, I don't care what algorithm says what about anything. I don't care. I don't care, because I remember somebody telling me, I remember somebody telling me, and I'm going to paraphrase this poorly, but it was like, that's true. There has never been a point where we can tell exactly what an audience wants and when they want it as now, and never has an audience been so dissatisfied with the product that's being put out.
It is an absolutely inverse relationship between the amount of data we can scrape and the amount of success we can foretell.
It doesn't make sense. It doesn't work. Guys, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. You know what worked? Is when people made things that they believed in. Because sometimes I really, and I'm this is kind of circling back to your question. If you make something that you feel like, and also this movie, or a lot of all of Yorgos' movies, and for that matter, when I look at Pixar, they're going to tell a story that is maybe something that you never would have thought of, or wouldn't have occurred to you, but they're going to tell it so specifically, and they'll tell it so meaningfully that you can't help but to see yourself or feel something about it, or see something. You go along with them in the journey, and you don't feel like you're being conned. You know what I mean? You're actually watching something real, which I think is the biggest difference in making something of quality and something that people are going to forget about.
Do you find that like you with this project that you're working on and it being in Mauritania, do you find that is that a specificity that you have found yet elsewhere in film, like specifically as it speaks to you? Or do you feel like I am pursuing this and I am doing this because I long for this specificity that I want to create for myself and to give to other people?
Yeah. When people ask me, like, what do you want to do? I often say, I don't know. I know when it's presented to me, because there have been so many things that I never would have thought about as being something that's relatively interesting. Not that I'd be uninterested, but just never would have occurred to me, that have changed my life. Uncorked being one. I'm so grateful that Prentice cast me in that movie, Prentice Penny. Elemental. Like, just
one of two best animated feature films that you have done voice work for.
I mean, I love animation. I'm a huge anime nerd. I've been in love with animation since I was a kid, and I'm still about that same level of love with it. So, or more, honestly, because there's just such great stories. Yeah, Pete Sohn, like, in that movie was a love letter to his family, to his parents, and the way people talk to me about that movie, it's just so, it's hard to put in language, but it means something to people, and it's about these universal themes, and it's all so thought out so wonderfully, and you can feel the effort, you can feel the love watching a movie like that. Same with Uncorked. It's not nothing to the people that made it, and I think those things are these intangible things you can't really quantify, but you know it when you see it and you feel it. Whether or not you're like, I'm in love with this or not, you can't deny certain things.
There's a line that stuck with me from Monkey Man when Alpha, his sort of like this found family that he takes to in the gender non-binary community that he ends up in, the people who save him from certain death, who are living in a temple that either the police are harassing them or are too afraid to go near them because they're scary, like they're unsettling to more normative people and to fascists, really. And
strange.
Yes.
Yeah.
Why did you help me?
You should have died from those injuries. The gods must have a greater plan for you. We all have scars.
I should go.
No, I won't do that. The police are looking for you all over town, but not here. They find us too unsettling. Stay with us. Rest. You need to heal.
So he finds this group of people who take him in and take care of him. And as the religious zealot is talking about Monkey Man, as he's become a disruptor, he's like, you need to extinguish this person before a nobody becomes a somebody. And then this somebody becomes a something that stretches over one single man's cause and becomes a movement.
Who is he? He's a nobody. Just some crazy kid from the gutter. People once said that about me. And now look at you. You're the nation's lion. Just one small ember can burn down everything. The very idea of him has to be extinguished. Find him before your nobody becomes a somebody.
And I feel like that, particularly in the position of people who are categorized not necessarily by the profession that they do, but the niche of the profession they occupy, like women directors, black actors, black film, gay film, as opposed to just being films and directors and actors and such. And I like it. Like with Dev Patel, like he made a movie about a movement, but when you are an Indian filmmaker and you've worked so much, I feel like in English language film, like you become also like this paradigm, and that's cool, but also that's hugely responsible, and it's a ton to ask of somebody to become the paradigm, to become the somebody who becomes the whole something. And I wonder too, like, do you feel like it's like, well, I would like to just be Mamoudou, but I feel like I have to be a fucking movement to do the thing that I actually want to do.
Look, I'm not going to lie and say, like, it's never occurred to me. It does.
And maybe you want to be a movement. I don't want to strip that from you.
No, a movement is like, I think overstating but there have been things that I passed on because I'm like, I can't do that. Representation wise, I can't do that. It just won't work. It won't work for me. And I feel like there's a responsibility there. And sometimes, it's totally fine with me. And sometimes it's like, I wonder what that would be like to explore. But I won't, because I think about what I used to feel like watching movies or watching TV. And I'm very conscious of those moments. So whenever I feel like I've strayed away from that, I've always regretted it. And it's never, it's not like, I'm very fortunate. Again, I'm extremely proud of the work that I've done up to this point. But if you make a compromise of yourself in that regard, you can't take it back. So I'd rather not.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just as simple as that. And yeah, you find people that you can trust and you work with, and obviously you learn and grow from certain other things and other people's mistakes, or maybe not mistakes, but choices. And how does it land on you when you watch? Like, oh, I wonder how did this happen? Like, I wonder what this was edited in a kind of way. Or, there's a lot of things, but you also just don't want to find yourself in a position where you feel stuck. So you find people that you can believe in and work with, and yeah. But yes, that's obviously a thing.
It's time for a quick break, but I'll be right back with Mamoudou Athie. Then stick around at the end because I will have one quick thing before we go. You all know that I love to keep you updated about friends of the show and what they've been up to since they came on. So let's do a little check-in with Ariel Vida and her new movie she's got out, Trim Season. Stick around for that.
Hey, this is Mike Cabalon.
Ifiwadiwe.
And Sierra Kato.
The hosts of TV Chef Fantasy League.
Where we apply fantasy sports rules to cooking competition shows.
We're not professional chefs or fantasy sports bros.
Just three comedians who love cooking shows and winning.
We'll cover Top Chef, Master Chef, Great British Bake Off, whatever's in season, really.
Ooh, chefs love cooking whatever's in season.
We draft a team of chefs at the top of every series.
And every week, we recap the episode and assign points based on how our chefs did.
And at the end of the season, we crown a winner.
You can even play along at home if you want.
Or you can just listen to us like a regular podcast about cooking shows. That's cool, too.
Subscribe to TV Chef Fantasy League on MaximumFun.org or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, welcome everyone.
Step right up. We're going to heal you. We are the healers, Ross and Carrie.
Yes, you there. You look like you're upset. Come up here.
Yes, you are healed because you've listened to our podcast.
Yes.
Have you been having trouble with demons?
Are you sleeping too much, too little, just right?
We have the solution. It is to listen to Oh No, Ross and Carrie.
A show where we examine unusual claims.
We show up so you don't have to. Find us on MaximumFun.org.
We won't actually heal you.
Welcome back. I've been talking with actor Mamoudou Athie, who plays 3 different roles in the newest Yorgos Lanthimos movie, Kinds of Kindness. Let's get back to our conversation. We've talked about the concept of Kinds of Kindness and Yorgos Lanthimos, but tell me, it's I believe the movie and its official description, it is like a triptych, a fabled triptych is how it describes itself. How do you describe Kinds of Kindness? What is Kinds of Kindness about from a man on the inside?
I do love this question because it gives me a chance to reframe it. And I remember reading it, then reading it again, and there are certain themes that are at the forefront: control, dominance, desperation, people's willingness to go to the upper bound limits of what a person can do for another or to another. But intellectualizing it beyond that doesn't really work. It's beyond at least my powers of comprehension. And I just wanted to feel it. When I was watching it, I was just, don't need to like break this down in a way that like, okay, this means this and this means this. It doesn't actually matter so much. I just want to feel it. And that's one of the most, if I wanted a dossier about like a film experience, I'll just, you know.
You can read the Wikipedia some other time.
No, I'll stay away from the Wikipedia if I want to read. That ain't going to work. But it's just, it does start off, and I've been saying this a lot, it does start, you know, you hear the song Sweet Dreams, and that gives me enough that I need to know. And I've had some maniac dreams, and I've wanted to break it down. I'm like, I guess I can't. I guess I can't. And that's fine.
Well, so you saying that was actually something I made a note about that me and my producer had talked about, like, was with Monkey Man, that theme of control. And with this movie, that theme of control. And two, like, that's the fun of this conversation in this particular show is, like, bringing together very specifically the movies that people have brought for me to watch with the way that I'm considering them sort of in, like, the scope of their work and the things that they talk about and the other work that they do. And, like, control and the limits that people are willing to go through and shatter through in the pursuit of achieving something or for or to someone else. It is like the epitome of Monkey Man. And so are those two, that seems to be thematically resonant with you, those two aspects. Are you a man of just incomprehensible drive?
I don't know about incomprehensible. There are certain people out there that do have a level of incomprehensible drive, whereas I'm in awe of or terrified of them. But no, I certainly I do remember a teacher telling me. I do remember my teacher Walton Wilson. He was the head of the voice and speech program when I was there at YSD. I do remember him telling me, you know, Mamoudou, you do have like an extraordinary amount of will. He didn't use the word extraordinary. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he did comment on my willpower, and I have always found that to be probably one of the most the thing that I can always count on. Like, well, I might not be great at this, but I'm sure I can get there just by force of will.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And finding out ways to acclimate myself to a situation that is maybe uncomfortable. Like, I mean, I was kicked out of my first acting school, and it wasn't because I was untalented. I just didn't know how to work. I was really like just the worst student at school. And that was a very expensive mistake that I paid for. Literally.
Those expensive lessons really stick with us.
What? Sorry, I just remember how much money that is.
You're like, honestly, this entire career is about coming back from that. Choice.
Honestly, I learned a lot from it in a way that I'm grateful for that experience. A little too expensive of a mistake to make, but I did learn that time. And just sticking with it and getting to Yale and working with all these people, I learned a lot about, you just have to. So my teacher, Ron Van Loo, he's the best. He was the best. And he would always say, he's like widely regarded as one of the best, if not there's, how do you say anyone's the best at anything? I think it's kind of a silly concept, but widely regarded as one of the most respected acting teachers in the country. And he was saying he got to NYU because he'd graduated there as a student, and he kind of just started faking it as a teacher. And here I am. You know, it's just like, sometimes it's not like that you're like anointed as some, you just have to like push through, and eventually it'll work out. And it's scary, but I think the risk is worth the reward in these cases, especially if you're doing it with integrity.
I feel like that, you know, the symmetry of sort of coming back to the character of Kid has been very satisfying in this conversation of like, and you know, just the aspect of Kid that he is, before he's good, he has endurance. And his first greatest skill starts out as endurance, and then he hones that skill. And I think that's such a wonderful, like, in terms of a creative profession, especially, I love that as a place to start, because I feel like the notion of attaching everything to an elite or just sort of untouchable skill set, it creates boundaries or barriers of entry for people. Like, well, if I'm not that good, I should never start. When it's like, no, you just need to start and have more either true belief or fake belief or just endurance than anybody around you. And along the way, you can't ask yourself at the start to be as good as a Deakins, as good as a Merrill. So just keep going.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a lot of ego involved in those kinds of decisions as well when you back yourself out of something before you start. Because the expectation that you should be some kind of savant or genius at something that you have otherwise no experience with is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Like, you just have to try. And it's not that simple. And there are plenty of people that have tried and it hasn't worked out in the way that they maybe envisioned for themselves for one reason or another, and sometimes beyond their control. So I'm not saying anything's possible, because sometimes things are just difficult, and sometimes there are circumstances outside of one's control that you have to account for. That's why I say I'm extremely fortunate, because a lot of things have lined up for my endurance to take over, or like my will to allow me to stay committed to something that's otherwise a dream for many, many, many other people. But when you are in, a situation where you can commit and focus on something as single-mindedly as I did with acting for years and years, you do have to be tough. You do have to be willing to, ignore people's criticisms. I mean, I've heard some crazy shit.
I bet.
People just talking way out of pocket.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah. People are just, you recognize whether that's jealousy or, or just ignorance, or just, people just saying things in a thoughtless manner. But speaking of Kid, as a fighter, I actually practice Muay Thai myself, and that's part of why I love, watching that movie. In some other combat sports I'm really engaged with. And one of the things that I'm always, you can be as talented. There's some really talented fighters out there who can't become world champion because they're not tough when it comes down to it. Because sometimes you're going to meet somebody who's either equally talented or just tougher, and that's scary. I've seen people lose fights because the other guy is just, or woman is just like a dog with a bone, and they are relentless, even though they know you're better. They just have this kind of maniac belief that makes the other person wilt, and you see it. Or on the inverse of that, like in a highly contested fight, and you see somebody's will just eke out over another, and they become world champion against all odds. It's one of the most beautiful things in the world, even though it's such a, intense and quite savage display sometimes. It's something really beautiful to see somebody's will and perseverance rise above. And so when I think about Kid and all those it was horrifying to see. I don't know, fixed fights really bothered me.
Oh God, yeah.
There's something that's really disturbing about somebody allowing themselves to get beaten for a paycheck. There's something that's really inhumane about it.
I want to make some money, guaranteed. Go on. Come to this place tonight. Bet on Khan and make a killing.
How the fuck do you know?
I'll be fighting him.
Fuck off!
The monkey will win the first 2 rounds and go down in the third.
What's in it for you?
I want a promotion.
And so that was one of the most terrifying things. There's something really just perverse about it. Just even thinking about it just makes me it's scary. And that whole system that exists and probably persists to this day.
I would assume so.
Why wouldn't?
Yeah.
And so, but then he comes around and, you know, he finds himself, you know, but he was doing that in pursuit of something. It wasn't like he was just doing that for no reason. He felt like he needed to do that in order to like build up this base, this certain kind of money to get into this position where he could, you know, take care of this dude once and for all. So it was for a cause. It wasn't just for
It wasn't
money.
just self-flagellation and like paycheck.
Yeah, it wasn't just for that. There was a sense to it. It was a heavy price to pay, but he did it, and then it didn't work out. And then the way he comes back, and then he like really bets on himself, and like literally bets on himself and gets that way more money than he ever would have if he had, you know, just continued doing that.
And the monkey.
Hey, what's the matter? Wow, hey? Wow. That was a surprise. Fucking lucky kicker. Looks like we got a cheeky little monkey on our hands tonight.
I just think, I'm like, man, this guy Dev Patel's, you guys got to stop playing with Dev Patel, man. This guy's real.
He's like, I'm making this because this is what it took to make this, and I am this man.
Yeah, it's moving.
Well, my last question to you would be from a very on the nose representational perspective. Have you had to do the equivalent of opening up your own chest on a hallucinogenic trip to reveal a solar system in your cavity of your heart to slough off past trauma and move forward?
Here we go. Within its root lies a potent toxin. We call it Trishul, after Shiva's trident. It will cut you open. Only a weakened man can benefit from this. Only a strong man can survive it. Are you ready? Yes.
Has that been part of your journey, or are you in process of that?
Hey, listen, I don't know. Searchlight, you let me know if I can talk about that. Because now we're getting into territory. I'm like, well, we can talk about it, but I don't know.
Wow, what a great cliffhanger. A question that would seem just like, we get flippantly like, oh yeah, I have to do it all the time. But instead, like, well, stay tuned, everybody. We can't really discuss.
They're not saying anything, so I'll just tell you. I have. And
okay.
I can say that. Well, can I say this? Actually, can I? Because I'm like, the shroom's legal. But without saying what, yes, I've had a life-changing experience with this kind of stuff that really, you know, especially during the pandemic, after just everything that was so horrifying about humanity during that period, it really took the time to like get in touch with myself in a different way that really not only improved my perspective, but also opened me up in a way, because I found myself really closing down because I was just so deeply disappointed with us.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe that we were so dumb. And just so like selfish.
Yeah.
I still can't believe it. And I just really wanted to be a hermit somewhere and like buy an earth ship somewhere in the desert and just like, you know, invite a couple of my friends. Honestly, I still want to do that.
Yeah. No, me and my friends talk about that regularly for sure.
But yeah, no, I absolutely had that come to Jesus moment. Come to Jesus. But you know, like that moment where you just really, okay, what what do I need and what is serving me in my life and what isn't?
Mm-hmm.
How do I slough off all the things that are just weighing me down, weighing my psyche down? Because I was in a serious funk.
Mm-hmm.
It was after I remember doing Archive 81, which wasn't like the happiest show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
And in conjunction with the pandemic and, just like what was going on with the country.
Mm-hmm.
And that persists really.
Mm-hmm.
It was just deeply depressing. So yeah, I had a chat with myself
mm-hmm.
in a way that really, really clarified a lot of things.
I'm glad that I have met you on the other side of that conversation with yourself, and I have very much enjoyed this entire conversation. I'm so pleased to be on the other side of it with you. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today, Mamoudou. This has been wonderful.
Yeah, this is a real joy and pleasure. Thank you so much for making the time as well.
Thank you so much to Mamoudou Athie for coming on the show. Kinds of Kindness opened in limited release last Friday and is expanding tomorrow, June 28th, jumping out the gate with a pretty great per theater average, so get out there and support some very fascinating cinema. And if you haven't seen Dev Patel's Monkey Man, it's currently streaming on Peacock, or you can rent it or buy it on most platforms. And now that one quick thing before I go, director Ariel Vida, who came on the show and talked about Rom and Beam from RRR, one of my favorite people, one of my favorite guests. Her latest feature is out. This is feature, I believe, number 3 for Ariel. It is called Trim Season, and it is a horror movie with some really gut-churning gore, I will add, about a gal in Los Angeles who is struggling to make ends meet. And, her best friend comes over and is like, you got to make a change. You need to do something dramatically different. It's not, got to get you out of this rut. And look at that. Look at the timing. They meet a stranger in a bar who, through a connect that's, I guess, a friend of hers, she learns about this opportunity to come to, I think it's Northern California, and trim marijuana for the harvest. And hey, it's just 2 weeks and you could walk out with a couple grand depending on how fast you trim. But then, of course, our heroine gets to the deep wilderness and realizes that this heavily armed, guarded little oasis of marijuana harvesting is not the serene pastoral dream it could possibly appear to be on the outside. And because it's a horror movie, terror ensues. The movie stars Bethlehem Million in the lead role, and I would say the most recognizable face in there, the biggest star, is Bex Taylor Kloss, is playing one of the fellow trimmers. It is, as we said, directed by Ariel Vida. The production designer on it is her longtime collaborator, Katie Simon. It's a production that's got some great folks who contributed to it, who steered it, from the top on down. And so support independent cinema, as we always say. It's like the unofficial logo of Feeling Seen, in addition to Canonically Queer. Unofficial tagline, support independent cinema. Get out there, rent Trim Season, and watch Mark Center give a positively eerie performance. He's not in a lot of scenes, but the ones that he's in, he does really manage to make my skin crawl. Doing a lot with a little bit of screen time, that Mark Center. And that is our show. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at FeelingSeenPod, or send us an email at feelingseen@MaximumFun.org. If you want to follow me, I am JorCrew on Twitter. Our theme music is by Andrew Epen. The show is produced by Marissa Flaxbart. Our senior producers are Kevin Ferguson and Laura Swisher, and this is a production of Maximum Fun.
Maximum Fun,
a worker-owned network
of artist-owned shows, supported directly by you.